The morning sun filled Daniel Carter's small London home. He stood in the kitchen preparing breakfast while his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, searched for her school shoes. "Dad, I found one." Daniel smiled. "And the other?" Lily looked under the sofa. "Found it." Daniel laughed. For 4 years, Daniel had raised Lily alone. He wasn't rich. He didn't drive an expensive car. But he had built a simple life around his daughter, and to him, that was enough. After dropping Lily at school, Daniel drove towards central London. His employer, Westbridge Solutions, handled corporate investigations and security. Daniel was one of their best investigators. That morning, his manager, Richard Hale, called him into a private office. Richard placed a file on the desk. "Your next assignment." Daniel opened it. The first photograph showed an elegant woman in her early 40s. Eleanor Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Holdings. Daniel knew the name. Her company owned property, technology, logistics, and investment businesses across Britain. "She is being targeted by someone inside her company," Richard explained. Daniel looked up. "Fraud. Potentially. And you want me to investigate her?" Richard nodded. "You'll become her temporary risk advisor." Daniel frowned. "You want me close to her?" "Exactly." Richard leaned forward. "Find out what she's hiding." Daniel closed the file. He didn't know that those words would soon become deeply personal. Eleanor Whitmore was already in her office when Daniel arrived. She was standing beside a large window overlooking London. When Daniel entered, she turned. "Mr. Carter?" "Yes." "I've heard you're difficult to impress." Daniel smiled. "I've heard you're difficult to work for." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Who told you that?" "People who probably wanted me to be careful." For the first time that morning, Eleanor smiled. "Sit down." Daniel explained his role. Eleanor listened carefully. She asked difficult questions. Daniel answered them without hesitation. By the end of the meeting, she agreed to hire him. But there was something strange about her. She seemed to know more about him than she should. Daniel noticed it. He simply couldn't understand why. During the following days, Daniel investigated Whitmore Holdings. Several suspicious payments had passed through small companies connected to the business. Someone was moving millions of pounds. But the evidence seemed designed to point directly toward Eleanor. Daniel quickly became suspicious. Someone was framing her. The more he investigated, the more convinced he became. Yet Richard kept reminding him of the original assignment. Stay close to her. Daniel tried. But staying close to Eleanor was becoming harder than expected. She wasn't the cold billionaire he had imagined. She was intelligent, direct, sometimes funny, and unexpectedly kind. One afternoon, Daniel received a call from Lily's school. She had fallen during sports. Daniel immediately left the office. Eleanor stopped him near reception. "Is everything all right?" "My daughter had an accident." "Is she okay?" "She'll be fine." "Then go." Daniel looked surprised. "I have a meeting with you." "The meeting can wait." Eleanor smiled. "Your daughter can't." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." As he walked away, Eleanor watched him. Her expression became unusually sad. At school, Lily was sitting with a small plaster on her knee. Daniel hugged her. "I'm okay, Dad." "You scared me." "I only fell." That was enough. Lily smiled. "Are you going back to work?" "No." "Good." They walked home together. Lily suddenly looked at him. "Is your new boss pretty?" Daniel nearly laughed. "Why are you asking that?" "You smiled when you talked about her." "I did not." "You did." Daniel shook his head. "You're too observant." Lily grinned. The next afternoon, Eleanor invited Daniel to lunch. They sat outside a restaurant near the Thames. The sun reflected across the water. Eleanor looked at him. "You don't talk much about your family." Daniel became quiet. "My wife died 4 years ago." Eleanor's smile disappeared. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." "What happened?" "Cancer." Eleanor looked down. "I didn't know." "Most people don't." "Do you ever think about starting again?" Daniel looked across the river. "Sometimes." "But my daughter comes first." Eleanor smiled softly. "She should." Daniel looked at her. "And you? What about me?" Why did you never marry? Eleanor hesitated. Because I trusted the wrong person once. Daniel didn't ask more. He could see that the subject hurt her. That evening, Daniel returned to the office. He searched through old Whitmore Holdings records. Then he found something unexpected. A payment made 4 years earlier. The payment had been connected to a private investigation. The subject's name was Daniel's late wife. Daniel stared at the screen. His wife had never told him about Whitmore Holdings. Why had Eleanor investigated her? Daniel immediately called Richard. No answer. He called again. Still nothing. Then his phone received a message from an unknown number. You are asking questions about the wrong person. Daniel stared at the screen. A second message arrived. Eleanor knows the truth. Daniel slowly looked across the office. Eleanor was standing in the doorway. She wasn't smiling. Daniel, she said quietly. He stood. How did you know my wife? Eleanor's expression changed. I was hoping you wouldn't discover it this way. Then tell me. Eleanor walked inside. Your wife worked with me. Daniel froze. She did? Yes. Why? She discovered someone was stealing from my company. Daniel stared at her. Who? Eleanor took a breath. I don't know. You're telling me my wife was investigating your company? Yes. And you knew about this for 4 years. Eleanor nodded. Daniel's voice became colder. Why didn't you tell me? Because your wife asked me not to. Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. Eleanor reached into her handbag. She pulled out an old photograph. Daniel recognized it immediately. It showed him his wife and Lily. His hands trembled as he took it. On the back was a handwritten message. Daniel recognized his wife's handwriting. Trust Eleanor when the truth finally comes. Daniel looked at Eleanor. What does this mean? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. It means your wife knew someone would eventually come after you. Daniel stared at her. Who? Eleanor shook her head. I don't know yet. Then she looked directly into his eyes. But I know one thing. What? You weren't sent here to destroy me. Daniel frowned. Then why was I sent? Eleanor whispered. Because someone wanted you close enough to discover the truth. Daniel stepped back. His entire assignment suddenly looked different. He had believed he was investigating Eleanor. But Eleanor had known about him from the beginning. And the woman he had slowly started falling for might have been protecting him all along. Neither of them realized that the real enemy had already discovered what they had found. And whoever it was would do anything to stop Daniel from learning what happened to his wife. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, because of questions. Too many questions. His wife had worked with Eleanor. She had investigated someone inside Whitmore Holdings. And before she died, she had apparently trusted Eleanor enough to leave her a message for him. Daniel sat at his kitchen table the following morning. Lily was eating cereal while doing her homework. Dad. Daniel looked up. Yes. You look worried. Daniel smiled. Just thinking about work. Lily studied him. Is your boss in trouble? Daniel paused. Maybe. Can you help her? Daniel looked at his daughter. I think so. Lily nodded. Then help her. Sometimes, Daniel thought, children make complicated things sound simple. At Whitmore Holdings, Eleanor was waiting for him. She didn't mention the previous evening immediately. Instead, she placed a coffee in front of him. You take it without sugar. Daniel looked at the cup. You remembered. I remember a lot. Daniel sat down. I want the complete truth. Eleanor nodded. You deserve it. She explained that 4 years earlier, Daniel's wife, Sarah, had discovered suspicious financial activity involving one of Whitmore Holdings' largest suppliers. Sarah was an employee. She had been working as an external financial consultant. She noticed that millions were being moved through a network of companies. She contacted Eleanor directly. At first, I didn't believe her, Eleanor admitted. Why? Because the person she suspected was someone I trusted. Daniel leaned forward. Who? Eleanor hesitated. Jonathan Reed. Daniel recognized the name. Jonathan was Whitmore Holdings' chief financial officer. Daniel had met him several times. He was charming, confident, and extremely well respected. Are you saying Jonathan killed my wife? No. Eleanor's answer came immediately. I don't know who caused her death. Daniel stared at her. But you suspect him? Yes. Why? Because Sarah's investigation disappeared the same week she died. Daniel's jaw tightened. What happened to her files? Gone. All of them? Yes. Daniel looked away. For years of unanswered questions suddenly had a direction. That afternoon, Daniel returned to work with renewed determination. He reviewed Jonathan Reed's transactions. At first, everything appeared legitimate. Then Daniel noticed something. A small consulting company had received regular payments. The amounts were never large enough to trigger immediate suspicion. But over 4 years, they added up to millions. Daniel followed the ownership trail. The company belonged to another company. That company belonged to a trust. And the trust was connected to someone Daniel didn't expect. Richard Hale. Daniel froze. His own manager. The man who had given him the assignment. Daniel leaned back. Suddenly, the original mission made sense. Richard hadn't sent him to investigate Eleanor because he suspected her. He had sent Daniel because Daniel could get close enough to discover the real operation. But why hadn't Richard told him? Daniel picked up his phone. Before he could call, Eleanor entered. She looked at him. You found something. Daniel nodded. I think I know who we're dealing with. Who? Richard Hale. Eleanor's face changed. For the first time, Daniel saw genuine fear in her eyes. You're sure? His name appears in the ownership records. Eleanor sat down. Then we have a bigger problem. How much bigger? Eleanor looked directly at him. Richard isn't working alone. They spent the afternoon tracing the financial network. Every path led to the same conclusion. Someone had been slowly taking control of parts of Whitmore Holdings. The goal wasn't simply to steal money. It was to force Eleanor into financial collapse. Then someone else could acquire the company's valuable assets. Daniel found another document. It was dated 4 years earlier, the day before Sarah died. He opened it. His face went pale. Sarah had sent Eleanor a message. If anything happens to me, don't trust anyone from Westbridge. Daniel looked at Eleanor. You knew this existed? No. Then who had it? I don't know. Daniel closed his eyes. His wife had been warning Eleanor about Westbridge, and yet Richard had recruited Daniel. There was only one explanation. Richard wanted Daniel to uncover something. But Daniel couldn't tell whether Richard was trying to expose the criminals or manipulate him. The following day, Daniel arrived at Whitmore Holdings with Lily. The school was closed for a teacher training day. Eleanor immediately welcomed her. Hello, Lily. Lily smiled. Hi. Eleanor crouched slightly. Your dad tells me you're very good at drawing. Daniel looked embarrassed. I may have mentioned it. Lily pulled a sketchbook from her bag. I drew this yesterday. Eleanor looked at the picture. It showed 3 people standing together. Daniel, Lily, and Eleanor. Eleanor became quiet. You drew us. Lily nodded. You make Dad smile. Daniel looked at his daughter. Lily, what? Eleanor smiled. It's a beautiful picture. She carefully handed the sketchbook back. Thank you. Daniel watched Eleanor. There was something sincere in her expression. For the first time, he wondered whether this assignment had changed more than his opinion of her. He was falling for her, and that scared him. Because Eleanor wasn't just his client. She had become someone he genuinely cared about. That afternoon, Eleanor and Daniel walked through the company's garden. I need to ask you something, Eleanor said. Daniel looked at her. What? If you hadn't been assigned to investigate me, would you still have wanted to know me? Daniel stopped walking. He could have lied. Instead, he told the truth. Yes. Eleanor looked at him. Why? Because you're different from what I expected. Different how? You care more than you let people see. Eleanor smiled. And you notice more than you admit. Daniel laughed. Probably. They stood quietly for a moment. Then Eleanor reached for his hand. Daniel didn't move away. Their fingers touched. Neither spoke, but the moment said enough. The next morning, everything changed. Daniel received a call from his bank. Someone had attempted to access his personal account. Then another call came from Lily's school. Someone had been asking questions about her. Daniel immediately left work. Eleanor followed him. Daniel, wait. No. He turned. Someone is asking about my daughter. Eleanor's face became serious. We need to protect her. I can protect my daughter. I know. Then why are you following me? Because this is connected to me. Daniel stared at her. Eleanor stepped closer. Please trust me. Daniel wanted to, but trust had become complicated. Then his phone rang. It was Richard. Daniel, Richard said. Where are you? Listen carefully. Daniel waited. Do not take Lily anywhere alone. Daniel's expression hardened. Why? Because we discovered who is behind everything. Who? Richard lowered his voice. Jonathan Reed. Daniel looked at Eleanor. Richard continued. But there's something else. What? Jonathan has someone inside Westbridge. Daniel's heart sank. Who? There was silence. Then Richard said, Me. Daniel froze. What? Richard's voice shook. I've been working undercover inside the network for years. Daniel stared at the phone. Then why did you send me after Eleanor? Because they were watching me. Daniel couldn't speak. Richard continued. I needed someone they didn't know was investigating them. Daniel understood. He had been chosen because nobody expected a single father to become the key investigator. But then Richard said something that changed everything. Daniel, there's one thing you need to know about Sarah. Daniel's heart stopped. What? She didn't die because she discovered the money. Then why? Richard paused. She discovered who was ordering the entire operation. Who? Richard's voice became barely audible. Someone Eleanor has trusted for years. The call suddenly ended. Daniel looked at Eleanor. She was standing only a few feet away. What did he say? Daniel didn't answer, because in that moment, he realized something. The person behind the conspiracy wasn't an outsider. It was someone inside Eleanor's closest circle. Someone who had been standing beside her for years. And someone who knew exactly how to destroy her. Daniel looked at Eleanor. We need to find out who your most trusted person is. Eleanor's face became pale. I already know. Who? She slowly turned toward the Whitmore building. Jonathan isn't the person I trusted most. Daniel frowned. Then who? Eleanor whispered a name. Victoria. Daniel recognized the name immediately. Victoria Whitmore. Eleanor's younger sister. The woman who had access to every major decision Eleanor made. The woman who had been beside her since the beginning. Daniel looked at Eleanor. Are you saying your sister's behind this? Eleanor shook her head. I don't know. Then she looked at him. But Sarah did. Daniel froze. What do you mean? Eleanor reached into her bag. She pulled out another envelope. The handwriting on the front belonged to Sarah. Daniel opened it. Inside was a single sentence. The person closest to Eleanor is not the person she thinks she knows. Daniel looked at Eleanor. The answer seemed closer than ever. But there was another twist waiting. Because the letter had been written only 2 days before Sarah died. And beneath the message was a name. Not Victoria. Not Jonathan. Not Richard. A name Daniel had never expected to see. His own, Daniel Carter. He stared at it in disbelief. Eleanor looked at him. Neither of them spoke. The man investigating conspiracy had suddenly become part of the mystery. And neither Daniel nor Eleanor knew why Sarah had written his name. Daniel stared at the letter. His own name was written beneath Sarah's warning. For several seconds, he couldn't speak. Why would she write my name? Eleanor looked equally confused. I don't know. Daniel read the sentence again. The person closest to Eleanor is not the person she thinks she knows. Then beneath it, Daniel Carter. He slowly folded the paper. Maybe she wasn't accusing me. Eleanor looked at him. What else could it mean? Daniel thought carefully. Maybe she wanted you to trust me. Eleanor's eyes widened. She knew you would eventually meet me? Maybe. Daniel looked at the date. Sarah had written the letter before her death. That meant she had predicted something. But what? They returned to Eleanor's office. Daniel locked the door. For the first time, they were no longer simply investigating a corporate fraud case. They were investigating Sarah's final warning. Daniel connected his laptop to the company's internal records. Eleanor watched him. What are you looking for? Something Sarah left behind. Where? Daniel looked at the old documents. She knew she might not survive. Eleanor became silent. She must have created a backup. Daniel searched archive databases. Nothing. He checked old employee accounts. Nothing. Then he remembered something Sarah used to say. When they were married, she always told him, "If you can't find something, stop looking where everyone else is looking." Daniel smiled faintly. She always hated obvious answers. Eleanor watched him. "You still love her?" Daniel nodded. "I always will." Eleanor looked away. "I'm not asking you to stop." Daniel stepped closer. "I know." She looked at him again. "But I care about you." Eleanor's eyes became emotional. "Daniel, I don't know where this ends." "Neither do I. But I know what I feel." Eleanor smiled. For the first time, neither of them needed an explanation. They held hands. Then Daniel's laptop made a sound. A new file appeared. Sarah Carter, Archive 4. Daniel froze. "I didn't open that." Eleanor looked at the screen. "Then who did?" The file contained a video. Daniel pressed play. Sarah appeared on screen. She looked tired but calm. Daniel's heart broke when he saw her. "Daniel," Sarah said in the recording, "if you're watching this, then Eleanor has finally told you the truth." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Sarah continued, "I need you to listen carefully." She explained that she had discovered a network operating inside Whitmore Holdings. But she had also discovered something more dangerous. The network wasn't controlled by one person. It was controlled by several people. They had been using Eleanor's company to move money into other businesses. Sarah had tried to stop them. Then she discovered the identity of the person controlling the group. The video paused briefly. Daniel leaned closer. Sarah continued, "The person behind this isn't someone Eleanor works with." Daniel frowned. "Then who?" Sarah looked directly into the camera. "It's someone Eleanor trusts because she has no reason not to." Daniel's heart pounded. Sarah gave one final warning. "Daniel, don't trust the person who gives you the assignment." The screen went black. Daniel looked at Eleanor. Richard, the assignment, Westbridge, everything suddenly connected. Daniel immediately called Richard. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. Then Eleanor received a message. She looked at her phone. Her face changed. "What?" Daniel stepped closer. "Who sent it?" Eleanor showed him the screen. It was a photograph of Lily leaving school. Daniel's blood ran cold. Beneath the photograph was a message. "Stop investigating." Daniel immediately reached for his phone. "I'm calling the police." Eleanor nodded. "Yes." But before Daniel could make the call, another message arrived. "If you involve the police, Lily becomes the next victim." Daniel's face hardened. He wanted to panic, but he couldn't. Not now. He had to think. Eleanor put her hand on his shoulder. "We'll protect her." Daniel looked at her. "How?" Eleanor answered immediately. "By exposing them before they can act." They contacted a trusted detective and provided everything they had: financial records, Sarah's recording, the suspicious companies, the messages, and Richard's connection. The detective confirmed that the evidence was serious. But there was still one problem. They needed proof connecting the people behind the operation directly to the money. Daniel knew where to find it: the company's old acquisition archives. There was a storage facility containing documents from before Eleanor became CEO. Daniel and Eleanor drove there during the afternoon. Inside, they found hundreds of boxes. Daniel searched for Sarah's old files. After nearly an hour, he found a box with her name. Inside was a notebook. Eleanor opened it. The pages contained names, dates, transactions, meetings. Daniel turned the pages. Then he stopped. One name appeared repeatedly: Victoria Whitmore. Eleanor stared at it. "My sister." Daniel nodded. "But look at the dates." They compared the entries. Victoria had been meeting secretly with Jonathan and Richard. The meetings happened months before Sarah died. Eleanor's hands began shaking. "I trusted her." Daniel gently held her hand. "You didn't know. She was my sister. That doesn't make this your fault." Eleanor looked at him. For years, She had believed she had lost almost everything because she couldn't trust people. Now she understood why. The betrayal had come from inside her own family. They returned to London. The police were preparing warrants. But Daniel still had one question. Why had Sarah written his name? He replayed the recording. This time he noticed something. Sarah's eyes moved toward the left side of the camera. She was reading something. Daniel paused the video. He zoomed in. A document was visible on the desk. He recognized it. It was a photograph of himself and Lily. Daniel's expression changed. Sarah hadn't simply been investigating the criminals. She had been protecting him. She knew they would eventually target him. And she had arranged for Eleanor to become his ally. Daniel looked at Eleanor. She knew about you. Eleanor nodded. She trusted me. Daniel smiled sadly. She knew I'd need you. Eleanor squeezed his hand. Maybe she wanted us to find each other. Daniel looked at her. Neither spoke. The police arrested Jonathan first. He tried to deny everything. Then they arrested Victoria. She broke down during questioning. But the biggest surprise came when Richard walked into the station himself. Daniel stared at him. You knew? Richard nodded. I knew parts of it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I couldn't risk them discovering the investigation. You used me? Yes. Richard looked ashamed. But I also knew Sarah wanted you involved. Daniel frowned. How? Richard pulled out an old letter. Sarah had written it before her death. It explained everything. She had discovered that the criminals planned to frame Eleanor. She knew Daniel was one of the few people capable of exposing them, but she also knew he would never willingly investigate Eleanor. So she created a plan. Richard would recruit Daniel. Eleanor would allow him into her company. And eventually, Daniel would discover the truth. It had worked. But nobody expected one thing. Daniel would fall in love with Eleanor. Richard looked at him. Sarah never mentioned that. Daniel smiled sadly. She probably would have. Several weeks later, the investigation was over. The financial network was dismantled. Whitmore Holdings survived. Eleanor cleared her name. Daniel left Westbridge Solutions. He wanted a different life. One where he wasn't constantly investigating people. One where he could spend more time with Lily. And one where he could be honest about what he wanted. One sunny Saturday morning, Daniel stood outside Lily's school. Eleanor arrived carrying a small gift. Lily ran toward her. You came. I promise. Lily hugged her. Daniel smiled. They walked together toward a nearby cafe. Lily suddenly looked between them. So, Daniel laughed. What? Are you two finally going to admit you like each other? Eleanor laughed. Daniel shook his head. You planned this. Lily grinned. I've been waiting. Eleanor looked at Daniel. Daniel looked back at her. There was no assignment anymore. No investigation. No secrets between them. Only a new beginning. Eleanor took Daniel's hand. I loved your wife for what she did for me, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. And I'll never try to replace her. I know, but I would like to be part of your future. Daniel smiled. You already are. Lily looked up at them. Does that mean we're a family now? Daniel looked at Eleanor. Eleanor smiled. If your dad agrees. Daniel crouched beside Lily. I think I like that. Lily hugged both of them. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something he thought he had lost forever. Peace. Months later, Eleanor opened a small community program in Sarah's name. It helped single parents receive financial education and career support. Daniel became involved. Lily attended the opening ceremony. A photograph of Sarah stood near the entrance. Daniel stopped beside it. He looked at the woman he had loved. Then he looked at Eleanor and Lily. His past was still part of him, but it no longer controlled his future. Eleanor walked over and took his hand. You okay? Daniel smiled. Yeah. He looked at the photograph one last time. I think she would be happy. Eleanor squeezed his hand. I think she would. Daniel looked toward Lily, who was laughing with the other children. Then he looked at Eleanor. The woman he had been sent to target had become the woman he trusted most. The secret he had been chasing had turned out to be something completely different. Sarah had never wanted Daniel to destroy Eleanor. She wanted him to find someone who would stand beside him when life became difficult. someone who would care about Lily, someone who would never ask him to forget his past. And Eleanor had been that person all along. Daniel had entered her life as an investigator. He left the assignment as a man who had found a second chance at love. And Eleanor had known the truth from the beginning. She knew exactly why Daniel had been sent to her. She knew what Sarah had planned. But she also knew something Daniel didn't. Sometimes the people we are sent to confront become the people who change our lives forever. And sometimes the greatest secret isn't about money, power, or betrayal. Sometimes it's simply the truth that two broken people can meet at exactly the right moment and help each other become whole again.